Imagine you're 65, 40 years of work across 20 jobs. You've lost everything. No money, no prospects, just a pension of $105 a month and one recipe for fried chicken. Most people at that age are on the porch watching the sunset, but one man got into his old car, loaded a pressure cooker in the trunk, and set off across America. He knocked on restaurant doors and offered his recipe. They said no 1,000 times. Not 100, 1,000 rejections. They called him crazy, laughed at him, slammed doors in his face. Today, his face is recognized worldwide. It appears on over 10,000 restaurants across 100 countries. His company sells billions in fried chicken every year. But the craziest part? He didn't even start in the chicken business until he was 40. Before that, he was nobody. Streetcar driver, railroad worker, firefighter, insurance and tire salesman. He never even finished school.
How did a man with almost nothing by 40 build a global empire after 60? Why did restaurant owners reject him 1,000 times, and who finally said yes? And what does fried chicken have to do with one of the most guarded trade secrets in the world, a secret split between two companies, locked in a vault so no one knows the full formula? The answers lie in the story of a man who never gave up. Harland David Sanders, Colonel Sanders, as the world came to know him. But to understand how he became a legend, we go back to the 1890s to Henryville, Indiana, to a childhood without money, education, or a father, where a 6-year-old boy learned to cook just to feed his younger siblings and set in motion something no one could have predicted. How did that boy become the creator of a culinary empire? You're about to find out.
On September 9th, 1990, Harland David Sanders was born in Henryville, Indiana. His father, a poor butcher, died when the boy was 5. His mother went to work at a canning factory, and 6-year-old Harland was left in charge. He learned to cook to feed his younger siblings. By 7, he could make bread, vegetables, and meat. His mother remarried. His stepfather was abusive and often beat him. At 13, Harland left home and became a streetcar conductor. Then came a blur of jobs: farmer, railroad worker, firefighter, insurance salesman, tire salesman, even an unsuccessful lawyer. At 16, he lied about his age to join the army and served in Cuba, where, by his own account, he mostly shoveled horse manure. He returned sick and thin. He kept drifting. His first wife once told him, "You jump from job to job like a flea." She was right. By 40, Sanders had no education, no fortune, no profession, no home. He was nobody. How did a man who had achieved nothing by 40 change the world of fast food? It started with a small gas station in Kentucky and a passing driver's simple request. 1930, the Great Depression. Sanders, now in his 40s, leases a Shell gas station on Highway 25 in Kentucky. It's an ordinary filling station, but he notices what others miss. Drivers are hungry, and there's nowhere decent to eat nearby. He converts a storage room into a 6-seat dining area and serves simple home-style meals: steaks, ham, potatoes. But the real breakthrough comes when he starts frying chicken, the same recipe he learned at 6. He cooks it in a cast-iron skillet for nearly 40 minutes, perfecting a crispy crust and juicy meat. Drivers begin planning their routes around Sanders' place. Word spreads. The 6-seat room can't handle the crowd. He buys the gas station across the road, tears down the old buildings, and opens a 142-seat restaurant, Sanders Court and Cafe.
By 1935, the business is thriving. The governor of Kentucky awards him the honorary title of Kentucky Colonel for his contribution to the state's economy. The former failure becomes Colonel Sanders. But there's a problem. The chicken takes 40 minutes to cook. Drivers don't wait. They leave. He's losing customers. He needs to cut cooking time without sacrificing taste. How do you cut 40 minutes down to 8 while keeping the chicken just as good? The answer came from an unexpected device, one no one in the restaurant business had used this way before.
Sanders had reached a dead end. His chicken took 40 minutes to cook. Drivers wouldn't wait. He lost a third of his customers. Cooking in advance wasn't an option. The chicken became dry. He tried everything: oil temperature, breading, different oils. Nothing worked. Then, in 1939, he found a device that changed everything. Industrial pressure cookers were designed for vegetables. No one used them for meat. Sanders bought one, modified it, strengthened the heating, adjusted the pressure, and found the right conditions for pressure frying. The result: cooking time dropped from 40 to 8 minutes. The taste stayed the same. A breakthrough that changed fast food forever. That same year, he perfected his recipe of 11 herbs and spices. The exact formula remains one of the most guarded trade secrets in the food industry. Sanders didn't patent it. Patents expire. Trade secrets can last forever.
The original signed recipe is locked in a vault at KFC headquarters. 2 separate companies produce parts of the mixture, so no single manufacturer knows the complete formula. Access is restricted to a handful of trusted people. Sanders had created a system that seemed impossible to steal. He was certain his creation would live forever. But just as his business was gaining momentum, history delivered another blow. Why did hundreds of roadside restaurants disappear in the 1950s? How could a single government program make your once profitable location worthless overnight?
December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor. The U.S. enters the war. Food rationing is introduced, and chicken becomes scarce. Saunders' restaurant, dependent on regular supplies, can no longer operate. He closes it and takes a job as a quality control inspector for the military. Hardly glamorous, but he knows how to survive. He waits. In 1945, he returns to Corbin and reopens. At first, business is good. Returning soldiers want home-style food. But in the 1950s, the government launches a massive interstate highway program. Interstate 75 bypasses Corbin. Highway 25 turns from a busy route into a quiet local road. Traffic vanishes overnight. Saunders fights back. Ads, signs, discounts. Nothing works. Sales fall. Debts grow. In 1955, he sells the restaurant to pay his creditors. He is nearly 65. No money, no business, no prospects. All he has left is a pressure cooker, a recipe, belief in himself, and a pension of $105 a month, nowhere near enough to live on. Most people would have given up, but Sanders knew he had something no one could take. He would not let his recipe die. Imagine, you're 65, no money, no job, no prospects, but you have a recipe for fried chicken. So you get into an old car and travel across the country, knocking on doors of restaurants you've never seen before. Sounds crazy? That's exactly what Colonel Sanders did. 1955. Sanders is 65. No money, no job, no business. The restaurant is sold, the house mortgaged. All he has left is an old Ford, a pressure cooker in the trunk, a jar of spices, and the belief that his chicken is the best in the world. He sets off across America with a crazy plan: knock on restaurant doors and offer a franchise. He trains cooks, controls quality, and takes 5 cents per portion. The restaurant pays only for actual sales, no risk, no upfront fees, a perfect deal. But in 1955, almost nobody knows what franchising is, and nobody believes an old man from Kentucky. He's rejected again and again. In Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, Ohio, they call him crazy, say his chicken is no different, slam doors in his face. Sanders sleeps in his car, eats sandwiches, keeps driving. Over several years, he traveled more than 100,000 kilometers, visited thousands of restaurants across 47 states, and received exactly 1,009 rejections. But he doesn't give up. As he said, "I knew my chicken was the best. I knew if people tried it, they would understand. I just needed someone willing to give me a chance."
To prove it, he often cooked right in restaurant kitchens, pulling his pressure cooker from the trunk and frying chicken in front of the owners. Those who tasted it admitted it was delicious, but fear of the unknown and simple doubt often outweighed the taste. In 1956, he finally found the right person. Pete Harmon, owner of a restaurant in Salt Lake City, agreed to try. Sanders trained the cooks, set up the equipment. Sales jumped 30% in the first month. Lines stretched down the block. Within 3 years, 200 restaurants. By 1960, 600. By 1963, 900. 1,000 rejections were finally behind him. But success had a downside. Sanders couldn't physically control hundreds of locations. Quality began to decline. Cooks changed the recipe. Costs were cut, and Sanders, who always valued quality over profit, faced his most difficult decision. When a business grows to hundreds of locations, you can't control every kitchen. Sanders had to make a choice that would change everything.
By 1963, Sanders was 73. His health was declining. Legs, heart, long journeys had become unbearable. The business had grown, and managing it alone was increasingly difficult. In 1964, he sold the company to investors led by John Y. Brown, Jr. for $2 million, a huge sum at the time, but compared with the brand's true potential, it was almost nothing. Sanders simply wanted his chicken to survive and wanted to finally rest. The contract had a clause. Sanders would remain the public face, receive $40,000 a year, and retain quality control. But the new owners wanted profits. They began changing the recipe. Fresh chicken became frozen. Milk and eggs in the breading became cheaper substitutes. Pressure cookers became ordinary deep fryers. The taste got worse.
Sanders was furious. In an interview, he said, "They made my chicken into crap. It's the worst fried chicken I've ever tasted." He visited restaurants, tore down ads, demanded the original method, threatened lawsuits. The new owners offered money, but Sanders refused to stay silent. In 1971, KFC was bought by Hublin, an alcohol producer. For Sanders, it was the final insult. He'd completely lost control. In response, he started his own restaurant, the Colonel's Lady, serving chicken by his original 1940s recipe. But there wasn't enough money to expand, and it closed. By 1973, Sanders had completely broken away from KFC. It seemed the story was over, betrayal and loss of the work he loved. But Sanders was over 80, and he'd never known how to give up. What happens when someone loses everything they've built for a second time? Most people break, but Colonel Sanders had always been the exception. 1973. Sanders is 83. Most people his age are retired, but he can't sit still. His chicken is turning into mediocre fast food. He begins a legal battle with Hublin, demanding control over the recipe. They reach a compromise. Sanders receives $1 million and, on paper, the right to monitor quality, but in reality, he has no real power. So he finds another way. He gives interviews explaining what real fried chicken should taste like. He publishes a cookbook with his secrets. He opens a restaurant in Kentucky, cooking by his original recipe,
so old that even KFC has forgotten it. People come from across the country, lines stretch from morning to night. It's his answer to those trying to erase his legacy. In 1975, his autobiography is published, unfiltered, honest about his mistakes, failures, anger, and disappointments. It becomes a bestseller. In 1976, 86-year-old Sanders puts on his white suit, takes his cane, and travels to Washington to meet President Ford and discuss small business problems. Security tries to stop him, but he says, "I'm Colonel Sanders, and I want to talk to the president about chicken." They let him through. He shakes the president's hand, speaks about supporting entrepreneurs. Ford listens, smiles, and promises to consider it. At a press conference, Sanders declares, "I won't let anyone take my chicken away from me. It will remain mine as long as I live." The same passion that drove him in his 40s, 50s, and 60s was still burning. Age was just a number. By 1980, he is 90. His health has sharply declined. He can't walk without help. His heart is failing. Doctors forbid travel or public appearances, but he still finds the strength for television and restaurant openings. He doesn't want to be forgotten, and he doesn't want his chicken to be forgotten either. When you're 90 and can no longer walk, what do you think about? The past, your victories, your mistakes, or what you'll leave behind? Colonel Sanders was thinking about the future. On December 16, 1980, Colonel Sanders died of pneumonia in Louisville. He was 90. Flags at KFC locations worldwide were lowered to half-mast. Headlines read, "The man who fed the world has died." He was buried in his white suit with a black bow tie. Years before his death, Sanders gave the company permission to use his image forever. He knew his face would become the brand's main symbol, and it did. After his death, his portrait appeared in signs in hundreds of cities, his quotes on packaging. He became a cultural phenomenon. But controversy followed. Critics said the company was making money from a man who hated what his business became. There was truth to that. KFC changed the recipe, removed expensive ingredients, switched to automated lines. What Sanders hated in life became reality after his death. But the company preserved the most important thing, the secret blend of 11 herbs and spices. It's still in a vault. Employees sign non-disclosure agreements. The recipe is guarded like a state secret. In the 1990s, KFC expanded internationally. Today, over 25,000 restaurants in 140 countries. In China alone, about 8,000 locations, more than in the US. And everywhere, the same man smiles. The boy who cooked at 6 to feed his siblings was nobody at 40, lost everything at 65, and became a legend in his 70s. But the larger the company grew, the further it moved from Sanders' ideals. Scandals followed: trans fats, antibiotics, cruel treatment of chickens on farms. Activists released shocking footage. Trust suffered. Yet KFC remains one of the most recognizable chains in the world, because behind the brand is more than fried chicken. It's a story about a man who never gave up. What remains of Colonel Sanders in today's KFC? His recipe? His techniques? Or just the face on the logo? The answer may surprise you.
What made Sanders' chicken so special? The 11 herbs and spices, yes, but was that really all? In the 1940s, every roadside diner had its own recipe. Why did Sanders' chicken become a legend while the others disappeared? The answer? Sanders created not just a recipe, but an entire system. He developed pressure frying, consistent results in just 8 minutes. He could have sold the recipe to thousands, but he was afraid it would be copied and ruined. Instead, he built a system where he personally trained cooks, controlled the process, and demanded standards. That obsession with quality, his willingness to spend days training a single cook, his refusal to compromise, that's what made his chicken successful. He wasn't selling food, he was selling trust. When customers came to Sanders, they knew exactly what they'd get. Consistency became the foundation of the brand.
After he sold the company, much of that philosophy disappeared. In pursuit of profits, processes were simplified, costs were cut. The secret spice blend survived, but the original philosophy was gradually lost. Today, KFC is a global corporation generating billions in annual sales. But is it the same chicken Sanders once made? On one hand, his recipe and legacy remain. On the other, industrial production, automation, and cost optimization have transformed it. Sanders might hardly recognize the business he created. Yet there's one thing KFC preserved above all: the Colonel's image. His face, name, and story continue to inspire. As long as customers see that smiling old man in the white suit, they associate KFC with tradition and quality, even if the reality has changed dramatically. Perhaps this story isn't really about chicken at all. It's about obsession, persistence, and what happens when a man's vision becomes bigger than the man himself. So, what's the real lesson here? We're about to find out. There was nothing predetermined about this story. Sanders wasn't a brilliant businessman from childhood. He was simply a man who wanted his food to make people happy and who never gave up. He lost his father at 5, dropped out in 7th grade, changed 20 jobs, went broke at 40, went broke again at 65, faced 1,009 rejections. His partners betrayed him, his recipe was changed, and still he fought until the very end. Why? Because he believed in his chicken, his idea, his purpose. He wasn't looking for an easy path or quick riches. He simply wanted to do what he did best and share it with the world.
But here's what matters most. He didn't build his empire at 20, 30, or 40. He built it in his 70s, 80s, and 90s. At an age when most people slow down, he was just getting started. At 65, he had almost nothing. 10 years later, 600 restaurants. 20 years later, 900. 30 years later, his face was known worldwide. This isn't a story about chicken. It's about never being too late to start. That age is just a number. That failures are stepping stones. That 1,000 rejections aren't a reason to quit. They're a reason to keep going. If you have a dream and you're willing to fight for it, you can succeed. Maybe not immediately, maybe it will take decades. Maybe you'll hear no 1,000 times. But if you don't give up, someone will eventually say yes. That's when your story begins. Just like Colonel Sanders, the boy who learned to cook at 6 to survive, and at 90 became a symbol of what happens when you refuse to stop believing. One detail I saved for the very end. In the 1960s, Sanders often visited his restaurants without warning. He'd order chicken and taste it. If it wasn't right, he'd tell the manager, "Fix it or I'll shut you down." Managers feared him. They knew he wasn't joking. The chicken wasn't just food, it was his life. Once, a manager asked, "Colonel, you're a millionaire. Why check chicken?" Sanders replied, "It's my life, my family, everything I have." He was old, sick, exhausted, but he loved his chicken as much as the day he first cooked it. That's the lesson. You can lose everything: money, business, reputation, but if you have passion and fight until your last breath, you can never truly lose. Sanders died in 1980, but his face, his story, and his chicken remain. His 11 herbs and spices are still in a vault at KFC headquarters. Next time you open a KFC box, look at his face and remember, he never gave up. He became who he was because he knew how to lose and keep moving forward. That was the most important recipe for success he left behind.